let's go through Luke 22 again. Jesus didn't have a problem with it. And when it comes, sorry, I'm starting to ramble. Maybe it's the beer talking.
Bringing you law, gospel, and guns. Welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio.
Welcome to another week of Armed Lutheran Radio, a show about guns, self-defense, hunting, competition, and what God's Word says about the issues surrounding gun ownership and gun rights. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, and this is episode 84. Thank you for making Armed Lutheran Radio a part of your week, and thank you to our fine sponsor, Cook's Holsters, for making this week possible. American-made custom Kydex holsters with a lifetime warranty and a 100% satisfaction guarantee. Check them out at cooksholsters.com. And we're a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network as well. Be sure to check out all of the great shows at selfdefenseradio.net. For all of those affected by Hurricane Harvey, our thoughts and our prayers go out to you. May Christ comfort you and keep you safe as the storm rages and the waters rise. Those of you not affected, please keep the people of South Texas in your prayers, and consider volunteering or giving to a reputable charity or relief organization to help those in need. You can look for a link in the show notes here on episode 84, where you can give to LCMS World Relief and Human Care's Disaster Relief Fund as well. Here in North Texas, the effects of Harvey have been brief and sporadic, just a little bit of rain, nothing crazy, but no shooting this weekend, just a little bit of drizzle all day. The first week of school for kids is in the books, but not much going on gun-related this week, unfortunately. But I do have some listener email to share, and haven't done that in a while. Wanted to get to that in this episode. I appreciate everybody who has taken the time to send us a message. Mark writes, "Thank you for introducing me to Ray Keating and his Pastor Grant novels." We interviewed Ray Keating back in episode 81. Mark says, "I'm now reading Warrior Monk, which is the first book in the series. I have a comment. As a New York State CCP holder, I know my permit is not valid for New York City. Mr. Keating's character is very fortunate to have a CCP for New York City, which really makes his books very fictional. In real life, New York City is very unfriendly toward the Second Amendment. I read horror stories of legal gun owners flying through JFK, LaGuardia, Newark, being arrested, trying to comply with the restrictive gun laws of New York. Enjoy your podcast." Well, thanks for the email, Mark. First, yes, it is a work of fiction, and that's what makes it fun. But to your point about New York is the city of my birth, and it's an awful place for gun owners. John Stossel recently did a segment on how travelers through New York airports who basically did everything that they were supposed to do legally to travel with a gun were arrested, thrown in jail, ended up spending thousands of dollars on legal fees to ultimately have the charges dropped or reduced. It's probably the biggest reason I have absolutely zero interest in setting foot in New York City ever again. Unfortunately, the city's run by a bunch of liberal anti-gun nuts, and until that changes, I'm not going anywhere near the place. As expected, Grant Cunningham's joke about 1911s in last week's episode 83, got us a response. Jeff writes, "If Grant wants to hate the 1911 pistol, it's okay with me. I think he often fails to put that pistol in perspective. Why was the 1911 designed? To meet the requirements for a military contract. That is all. It was not intended to be designed for commercial personal defense use. While the 1911 did what it was supposed to do, what happened to the 1911 after World War II? Well, Bubba got a hold of it and everyone else and their uncle and thought they could do a better job than John Browning. If there's a problem with the 1911, it's likely because of who made or modified it and less likely to be in the design. As for the missed thumb safety issue. I've heard stories of people losing points in competition and some more in training classes, but have you read anywhere if a thumb safety miss or delay actually caused someone to be injured or killed? I wonder if the risk of the extra second-long delay is more of a possibility than a probability. Oh, and Grant's joke about JMB, that would be John Moses Browning, not being talented enough to design a revolver. He may be right. At least Browning was smart enough to design much simpler guns, like machine guns. Well, I'm not getting in the middle of this at all. I'm just going to leave this here. Thank you for your message, Jeff. Thank you for listening. And finally, Brian writes with a good question. I love your podcast. Would you please address the following thought on your podcast? Do you think the idea of the left focusing on quote-unquote gun violence rather than the criminals who commit the crimes while using a gun is an attempt to avoid the uncomfortable idea of personal responsibility by people who are likely their constituents or potential constituents? Well, that's an interesting topic, Brian. People on the left don't want other people telling them how to live or to judge their sinful actions. That's clear. That's been the case since the 1960s. That's where we get this concept of people being born this way, or gender fluidity, or blaming systemic racism or poverty or white privilege or police brutality or President Trump for bad behavior on the part of minorities, or blaming Trump for violence by leftist mobs. They blame greed or corporations or the 1% for the poverty among certain ethnic groups, for example, rather than admitting the more painful reality that many in poverty are there because of bad choices in their lives, lack of motivation, lack of skills, lack of work ethic, a lack of morality. There are many who need help, and we should be helping them. There's no question about that. But many of the people who are in poverty are victims of their own bad choices. The left is not interested in personal responsibility at all, or the concept of consequences for bad behavior in general. And more directly to your point, yeah, they focus on so-called gun violence, quote unquote, because to bring personal responsibility into the conversation means they've got to talk about some things, like I mentioned before, some rather embarrassing truths that plague their core constituencies. Crime and violence are a result of a lot of things: bad parenting, the dissolution of the family, lack of positive male role models. There are a lot of things that factor into the causes for violence and crime. But to point out and to focus on the truths, the real reasons for crime, yeah, that would go a long way to fix the problem, but it would be uncomfortable for politicians in both parties. If you took that stand, the first thing and this is the biggest thing that politicians fear, it's being called a racist. And to say these things and to point out these truths would inevitably draw that criticism, especially if the politician happens to be white. Secondly, it would be an insult to those in poverty to whom the left has promised for generations that they were going to fix things. After years of blaming whitey or corporations or Republicans or President Trump, it would be a hard pill to swallow to suddenly point the finger at the real problem. And third, in pointing that finger, it would inevitably open the politicians and their parties up to criticism. See, if the dissolution of the family is the problem, well, what caused the dissolution of the family? Why did trillions of dollars in spending on poverty, why has that done nothing to solve the problem of poverty and crime? It'd be an admission by the political class that their 50-year war on poverty has been a failure. So instead, politicians focus on guns, and they propose gun control because it's easy. It's a cop-out. It allows them to pat themselves on the back and tell their constituents that somebody else is at fault. It's evil Republicans, the NRA, guns. That's the problem. Rather than facing difficult truths, they find a different scapegoat. It allows them to say they've done something, and when that something fails to make a difference, it then allows them to come back later and do it again. So thanks, Brian, for your message. I appreciate it. Folks, if you've got a question or a comment, visit our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback and send us an email or a voice message. We'd love to hear from you. We'll even maybe play your message or read your message on the air as we've done today. All right, coming up on the show, Sergeant Bill has tips on training at a square range, how you can get effective practice in a restrictive environment. Mia's talking about guns at college as she drives her daughter off to her first year at college. And Pastor Bennett is here to dissect an interesting video from a church. No, not a church. A cult? No, they're not a cult. It's some group called the Fellowship of the Martyrs. We'll get into it. We'll figure it all out when we get there later in the show. Mia kicks things off next after this message. You're listening to Armed Lutheran Radio right here on the Self-Defense Radio Network. As many of you know, Sergeant Bill and I are competitive shooters. We're also reloaders. Bill helped me to get started last year, but I've still got a lot to learn. One thing I do know, though, you need a good source for supplies and components. So let me tell you about U.S. Reloading Supply. Yeah, there are bigger suppliers out there, but what sets U.S. Reloading Supply apart from the rest is their dedication to customer satisfaction. Check them out at usreloadingsupply.com. They carry the top name brands like Starline, Rainier, Barry's, Remington, Spear, and Hornady. If you've got a special order like primers and powder that you don't see on their website, give them a call for a quote. I did and got a great price. Excellent customer service, fast delivery, prices that include shipping, and a promise to match or beat any retailer's price, including shipping. Call them today, 941-451-7357, or visit them today at usreloadingsupply.com and use the promo code Lutheran2017 to save 10% off your order. usreloadingsupply.com.
Time now for another Ballistic Minute with Sergeant Bill Silvia.
Hey, I'm Sergeant Bill. This is your Ballistic Minute. Today we're going to talk about square range drills. Okay, so most people have access to square ranges. A square range is your typical indoor range, sometimes they're outdoor, where you stand at a counter or a bay and you pick up your gun from the counter and you shoot it at a target. You can't move, you can't draw. Only thing you can do is shoot one round per second, usually, is all they allow you. Not a lot of fun, and sure as heck doesn't help your practical pistol shooting. But here's a few drills, if that's the only range you have available to you, that will give you something else to do besides sit there and put holes in paper, and will actually help you get a little bit better. So, obviously you shoot groups, but you shoot it freestyle at 3 yards, 7 yards, 10, 15, 20, 25, whatever the ranges are you have at your range. Try it strong hand only at all those different ranges, at different distances. And then also do it weak hand only. There's a drill you can download off the internet called Dot Torture. It prints on a regular sheet of paper. It's got several small dots. You're supposed to start at about 3 yards. Each dot has instructions on how to shoot it. That's usually a pretty good one to do. There's a few that are draw from the holster, but you can just pick up off the table if you have to. One of my favorites at the square range is the 1-in-1 drill. So you load one round in the chamber, take that full magazine out, put it on the table. You put an empty mag into the gun, so it's only got one in the chamber. You put the gun down on the table next to your full mag and use a timer, or you don't have to use a timer, you use a stopwatch or just nothing. And what you do is you pick the gun up, you shoot one shot, it goes to slide lock, you drop the empty mag, you reload the full mag, you shoot one shot. Unless you're really fast, you're going to have a second between shots. More than a second. Then when you're done with that one shot, and 1-in-1 I guess, you take the full mag out, put it back down on the table, put your empty mag back in it, and it's already got a round in the chamber. You're set up to do it again. Now a variation on this one is one we see a lot in IDPA competitions. Pick up, load, and one shot. So you'll start out with an empty gun and a full magazine. And at the buzzer, if you have a timer, you'll pick up the gun, pick up the mag, load it, fire one shot. That's it. Then you can unload it, put that one round back in the magazine, set it up again, do it again. Now I shoot Glock, so I never have to do this. Just kidding. You can set up malfunction clearances. So, like a stovepipe. So take a spent case off the ground and open up the ejection port and actually put it into the ejection port so that you have a stovepipe jam, and practice swiping it off, clearing it, and firing a shot. And you can set it up again and do it over and over. Now, sort of the same thing, you can set up a double feed. Place a round into the open chamber, so you got to lock the slide back, and then put a piece of spent brass in there with it, and then slowly ease the slide forward, and it'll set up a double feed. You can practice setting up, how to clear that malfunction. If you need to practice misfires, you can just put a spent brass back into the chamber, load the magazine, practice a tap rack. Or you can do a ball and dummy drill, which is basically the same thing. You put one or two of the spent cases into a magazine of live ammo. Try to do it randomly, or if you're there with somebody else, have them load the magazine for you so you don't know when it's going to occur. Then you have to do that clearance drill, tap rack, keep shooting. Now you can practice the skill of your low ready or compressed ready and punch out and fire one shot. That's a good skill for if you're, going to a position of cover and you got to shoot. It's the same thing. You're just doing it from a stationary spot. You can practice your tack loads or your reloads with retention if you have mag pouches on you. And if you've got a light on your defensive gun, you can practice using your light or even a handheld flashlight if that's what you have. I have some guns in the house that I have a light on it. Work gun has a light on it, but I don't carry a gun, concealed that has a light on it at this time. So I have a pocket flashlight. You can practice manipulating that, whether you use a Harry's technique, modified Harry's, cigar, whatever, neck index, cheek index. There's lots of different ways. Just try them out and see what works for you. And you can actually shoot with it to see what it's like when you're at the square range, which is pretty interesting. And last but not least, do some distant headshots. Now, these are difficult. Put that target all the way back at 25 yards. A lot of indoor ranges or, the square ranges are usually about 20, 25 yards. Put that target back at all the way as far as it'll go and do some headshots. See what it's like shooting that small a target at that distance. If anything, it's going to build your confidence level. So these are just some of the drills you can use if you're stuck at a square range. I'm Sergeant Bill. This has been your Ballistic Minute.
Sergeant Bill Silvia is a 15-year veteran of the Dallas Police Department and masterclass competitive shooter. You can watch Sergeant Bill's shooting videos at armedlutheran.us/Sergeant Bill.
As many of you know, you'll likely have to win 2 fights if you have to use your gun in self-defense. The first fight is the gunfight itself. The second is the fight to clear your good name through the legal system. Even if you do everything right, you can still be prosecuted, which can cost you tens of thousands of dollars. Armed Lutheran Radio is proud to partner with the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. And while they can't completely take away that worry, they can give you the peace of mind knowing that you've got the financial and legal assistance you need to win this new fight. Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network can help. Go to my website, armedlutheranradio.us, look for the coupon code on the right-hand side in the sidebar, and sign up for Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network protection and save $25 off your first year of membership at armedcitizensnetwork.org. Join me, Pastor Bennett, Paul Lathrop, and thousands of American gun owners who trust Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. armedcitizensnetwork.org.
The percentage of women who own guns is growing. American women are more knowledgeable and better equipped to defend themselves than ever before. So, why is it that every time I go to a gun shop, I feel like they're talking down to me? Like, hey little lady, let me show you what you need. It's like all they want to do is sell me a pink gun. If you're tired of feeling that too, visit Guns for Gals, a specialty firearms boutique designed to empower women with information about firearm safety and to equip them with the means to protect themselves. The owners go out of their way to find products specifically for women, and they actually listen and ask questions to help you find the right products to meet your needs. If they wouldn't own it themselves, they won't sell it. Guns for Gals is located at 2035 Central Circle, Suite 108 in McKinney, Texas. Open Monday 1 to 6 and Tuesday through Thursday 11 to 7. And on weekends, you can find them at a gun show near you. Or shop online at www.gunsforgals.com. Guns for Gals. More than just a gun shop. It's how gun shopping should be.
Up next, it's Mia's Motivations with Mia Anstine.
Hey guys, I'm happy to be chatting with you again. Right now, I am on the way to take my daughter up to college, and I wanted to chat with you a little bit about preparing your kids for going to college, and some of you might already have kids that have gone through and even graduated. But my daughter, she shoots competitively in shotgun as well as archery, and she also hunts, and she's done self-defense courses, but she is not old enough yet to purchase her own handgun, but she does have her own shotgun, and she has her own bow and also a hunting rifle. But the shotgun and the bow, we actually are taking with us to her college. And while the college doesn't allow firearms on campus, they do have a vault where the students can check in their firearms and they will store them. And this is something that I think a lot of people should look into, because if your children do shoot competitively, or if they do hunt and they want to take their hunting rifles with them, search on the college or university's website and check and see if they have a similar thing where you have firearm storage. Because we actually were having to look into different safes and vaults and ways to anchor them into storage units. And with this program at the college she's going to attend, we won't have to do that. So it's not going to be an extra expense. They actually will require an identification to check them out, so not anybody is in there just rummaging around looking through guns, and it's not as though someone's going to be able to check out her gun. She has to do it herself. So I just wanted to let you know, if you've got students that are into competing and hunting, that this is something they can partake and continue on after they leave home and head on to the next step of their life. I hope you find that helpful. Have a great week. Bye, guys.
You can read more from Mia and watch her YouTube videos at miaanstine.com.
It's the Bill of Rights, not the Bill of Needs. I'm Alan Gottlieb, founder of the Second Amendment Foundation. When someone says we don't need that kind of gun, remind them the Founding Fathers determined what rights our Constitution should protect. There's a world of difference between rights and needs. It is not the function of government to tell us what we need or what we don't. Certainly no one needs an assault rifle or a Saturday night special, or for that matter, no one needs a Corvette with a high-capacity horsepower engine capable of speeds to 150 miles per hour. But in the hands of honest, responsible individuals, we have the right of choice. We have the right to read books others don't like. We have the right to listen to any radio program we choose. We have the right to dress the way we want to. We also have the right to own firearms of our choice. So the next time someone tells you, you don't need something, tell them it's the Bill of Rights, not the Bill of Needs. Join the Second Amendment Foundation today so that this message and our Bill of Rights might live. Call 425-454-7012. That's 425-454-7012.
Having a good holster is absolutely critical if you're going to carry a firearm for self-defense. If you need a quality holster, let me recommend Cook's Holsters. I've found Cook's Holsters when I bought an IWB holster to write a review. I liked that holster from Cook's Holsters so much that I applied to become an official Cook's Holsters dealer. Cook's Holsters are American-made, custom-molded to fit your firearm. The advantage of Kydex is that it holds its shape. It doesn't lose retention. It won't wear on the finish of your firearm the way leather will. They're available for hundreds of gun models, dozens of color combinations and different printed patterns. They're great for concealed carry, for range work. They come with a lifetime warranty against defects and a 100% satisfaction guarantee. Check them out today, www.cooksholsters.com. Use the promo code ARMEDPODCAST to save 10% off of your order, and make sure you've got a quality holster. Go to cooksholsters.com today.
Up next, we're clinging to God and Guns with Pastor John Bennett.
Welcome back. Time now for Clinging to God and Guns, where we analyze and poke fun at articles and videos that use Scripture to support a position in the gun rights debate. Joining me, as always, Pastor John Bennett from St. John's Lutheran Church in Willow Creek, Minnesota. Welcome back, Pastor.
Thank you, Lloyd.
Well, today we're looking at a video from Uncle Doug at Fellowship of the Martyrs out of somewhere in Missouri.
Misery.
Misery. Well, I've been trying to make sense of it, what exactly a Fellowship of Martyrs is. They apparently call themselves martyrs, and they're using this definition from the old Greek, meaning witness, not people who died for the faith. That would be kind of weird. They hold what they call liberty conferences every year, which looks like a handful of people sitting around.
Navel gazing.
Navel gazing, apparently, yes. And they have this farm where they raise their own food and their own crops, and they don't like organized religion, but they swear they're not a cult. But if it looks like a cult and it talks like a cult and it smells like a cult, it's probably a cult. Uncle Doug records his videos from a very dimly lit room in what he calls their ministry house, and from what I can tell, they take in lost souls, put them to work on the farm, baptize them in a pond or the Missouri River or a public swimming pool or even somebody's kiddie pool in the backyard. Whatever body of water they can find, they'll dunk you in. They don't do a lot of show prep, apparently. There's a lot of ums and changes of direction, and it seems to be completely off the top of his head. I've saved you the pain of listening to him clear his throat a lot and all the mouth noises that he does and all the ums, and I cut things down to just the salient points from this 5-minute video. And in this one that we're looking at today, Doug is talking about gun control, confiscation, and whether Christians should respond with deadly force to government tyranny.
Coming to you today, we're talking specifically about gun control and how do Christians oppose a tyrannical government? Do we have a responsibility, a right to bear arms, not bear arms, whatever?
So he's stammering right out of the gate. He's setting the stage. That's kind of setting the stage for what's to come, although it wanders a bit. He's asking the question, should Christians oppose or take up arms against a tyrannical government?
Well, I have to look at Romans 13. And, this is it depends on who you talk to, but this is a very interesting topic of discussion, even among Lutherans, because on the one hand, we have this responsibility to obey the government. Mm-hmm. Where I would say that we do have the right to take up arms against the government is if, I don't want to get myself in too much trouble here, but if in regards to our civil liberty, they begin to severely oppress the citizenry, so that standing up to the government becomes a moral obligation in order to, for the safety, for the well-being, for the love of your neighbor. That's about as far as I would go. On the other hand, if your government is just, a bunch of socialist jackwagons running the place and taking your money and that sort of thing, and they're not, throwing people in jail willy-nilly for, to use a 1984 term for thought crime and stuff like that,
right?
It's not an issue. But if it's one of those things where, in order to protect your fellow man for love of your neighbor, that's an entirely different situation. For example, if you were living in Nazi Germany and there was a real chance that the people could rise up and overthrow the government to save their fellow man, you can make an argument that would be ethically and morally righteous. But to just randomly take up arms against the government because they want to take away this or that right, I wouldn't go that far.
Right. So here's his next clip, and this is the pretext to his upcoming rant. This whole thing starts out as discussing rebellion or uprising against the government. It winds its way into a rant about guns.
If we are going to be true to who we say we are, then we should be praying for Christ to fill us, for Jesus to conform us to his image.
What is he talking about here? I mean, about Jesus conforming us to his image. That's not really possible, is it? I mean...
Okay, well, there's a problem here with his reasoning. The only one that's going to prevent us from being conformed to the image of Christ is us, is our sinful nature.
Right.
We all have been clothed with the righteousness of Christ through baptism. We have been clothed with the righteousness of Christ as we persevere in the faith. But at the same time, we cannot become Christ in any sense. We can be Christ-like in our attitude towards our fellow man. We can be Christ-like in how we treat our neighbor, how we treat our family, and so forth. Okay, and we can't be conformed to the image of Christ because Christ is perfect. Now, we can in the sense that when we are raised and enter into his eternal presence, that we will be just like him, being incorruptible and so forth, and Paul talks about that in 1 Thessalonians. But as far as in this world, we cannot be fully like Christ because of our sin. We cannot have the image of Christ in the sense that we cannot... Oh gosh, he uses such goofy language here. I'm sorry. I need to think about this.
Is this sort of that Wesleyan idea that you can somehow make yourself perfect in this life?
Maybe that's what he's getting at. And in fact, I don't have the quote right in front of me. I've got it in a book at home. But just to paraphrase Wesley, he said that if a person has enough faith, they will cease to sin. Ironically, though, Wesley never attained that level of faith, I guess. But to be conformed to the image of Christ, that's something that doesn't happen this side of heaven. Right. Because to be conformed with the image of Christ is to have the image of the eternal God. We lost that in the fall.
All right, so here's where the crazy comes in when he starts going a little off the deep end.
And Jesus H. Christ doesn't mean his middle name is Harry, as in Dirty Harry. I cannot see a scenario in which Jesus says, "Make my day." Or bears arms, protests, rolls tanks up into some civil government that isn't doing the right thing.
Well, we can't see Jesus doing that stuff either because that wasn't really his mission, was it?
Yeah, I think he stood before this guy named Pilate and said, "My kingdom is not of this world," but I could be mistaken on that. That's just plain goofy. To start out by saying Jesus H. Christ, I wonder if he even knows where that term comes from. Just a little a nerd minute here, but in the Hebrew language, what is transliterated as our H, it kind of looks like a H in the Hebrew language. It is the definite article. So to say Jesus H. Christ is to say Jesus the Christ, essentially identifying Jesus as the Messiah. But evidently he thinks it has something to do with Dirty Harry. I don't know.
So here we go. The next clip is a horrible paraphrase of one of our favorites, Matthew 26:52.
If I can't get my head around how Jesus... Okay, now, of course we don't see guns in the Bible, but even when they did bear arms, and one of his disciples, his posse, cuts an ear off a guy, Jesus says, "Dude, why'd you do that?" and heals the guy's ear.
Dude.
Dude.
See, this is why you don't do your show. You got to do show prep. You don't make this stuff up on the fly. All right, so Jesus reprimanded his posse after they lopped off the ear of the servant of the high priest in the Garden of Gethsemane, so therefore we shouldn't take up arms against the government.
Well, and here's the annoying part of this is that, he talks about how, whenever people were bearing arms around Jesus, he would scold them, just to paraphrase his words.
Dude.
When somebody says "dude," I think of the movie The Big Lebowski, but that's just me.
Well, back in Luke 22, didn't he say, dude, go buy a sword?
I think he did. And when those disciples were bearing swords, he said, dude, that's enough. I brought it up in a previous segment of how Jesus, when he met some soldiers, he didn't tell them, hey, lay down your arms and be a pacifist. Mm-hmm. He told them to be good soldiers, to live in an honorable way regarding their charge as soldiers. So to say that Jesus would admonish anyone who would bear a weapon, well, we don't see it in the gospel, because really Jesus told people to bear weapons, namely his disciples.
Exactly. All right, so in the next clip, not only is Uncle Dougie scripturally illiterate, he proves he's historically ignorant as well.
Okay, that's the way Jesus handles tyrannical civil governments. He prays, and they fall. And Jerusalem fell, the Roman Empire fell. It didn't require guns. Christians, by their love, moved into the Roman Empire until they couldn't be persecuted anymore, because there were so many Romans, even in the army, that were Christians, you couldn't kill them all. They didn't resist. They didn't take up arms. The Quakers didn't take up arms. There's always been groups through history that understood that our warfare is spiritual, not natural.
So what? Did Jesus pray for the fall of the Roman Empire? I missed that in my reading.
Yeah, I missed the part in history where the Roman Empire fell and no weapons were used, but it's just because there was too many Christians in the Roman Empire.
The Roman Empire, there's like hundreds of theories or explanations for the fall of the Roman Empire. I mean, and there were a variety of reasons, the least of which was probably the fact that Christians were pacifists. And the empire reached its largest expanse something like 60 years after Jesus' death. It was another 250 years before the Goths started invading Roman lands. Then there were a couple of nasty civil wars, and the empire got divided in half, and their military became so inept that they couldn't control their own borders, and next thing you know, Alaric is sacking Rome, and there's plague and starvation, and boom, by 500 AD, the empire's dead. So the idea that Jesus prayed and Rome fell is a bit of a stretch.
I think it's more than a stretch. I think it's just plain lunacy.
And
no, certainly we can say it was God's will that the Roman Empire fell.
Absolutely.
But, it's not like Jesus was on his knees in the Garden of Gethsemane saying, Lord, if it's your will, may this not happen to me, and may these dirty, rotten Romans fall.
That's right. All right, so we go from opposing tyranny to strict pacifism because God spoke to Uncle Dougie and told him so.
For me personally, God has made it clear that I'm to never shoot a gun ever again. Okay? We're not storing up guns. We're not storing up ammos. I don't own a gun. I don't have a gun registered in my name. The 22 rifle that my dad gave me that came from my grandpa is long gone, and I don't even know where it ended up, frankly.
I mean, come on. I mean, what self-respecting cult leader doesn't stockpile ammo? I mean, really?
He doesn't have a gun registered in his name, but I don't think Missouri requires registration.
I don't think they do either. Okay, so fine. He doesn't have a gun. He doesn't want a gun. I mean, gun ownership's not for everybody, and we don't advocate that everybody should have one if they don't want one. It's a personal decision. But so why share this point? It's because he doesn't think you should have a gun either, right?
Yep, it's that sanctimony.
Mm-hmm. So here we go with our next clip. A nice, comforting message that'll make you feel all warm and fuzzy.
That's never been the point. That's not what we're about, not what we're going to be about. We are going to pray, and God will do what he's going to do. And some people will die, and, God will judge all of it.
That's comforting. God's going to do his thing. People are going to die. God will judge. Okay. I feel so much better now, filled with the gospel.
I have yet to get up in the pulpit and say to the congregation, "You're all going to die." It might be true, but it's not a very comforting message.
People are going to die. God's going to do what he's going to do.
Thank you, Captain Obvious.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that. All right, so we've gone from opposing tyrannical government to opposing gun ownership on a personal level, and next we're going to get to conspiracy theories. So put on your tinfoil hats and turn to the Epistle of St. Alex Jones.
I know that the government is going to try to take everybody's guns. They have to do that in order to do all the rest of their agenda and everything else that's coming in the book of Revelation. Gun control, as in gun confiscation, is an absolute must. So by incremental steps or by one fell swoop, they're going to create a scenario where everybody has to. And a lot of people that say they're Christians may well go to war over whether or not they're going to give up their guns.
Hang on a minute. Let me get my Bible. I got to turn to Revelation. I'm looking in my concordance. I'm looking for gun control. Angels and plagues, woman and the dragon. I don't see guns and gun control. What is this? What is this conspiracy theory crap about gun control is an absolute must so that our government can fulfill the Revelation prophecy? What is that?
Well, he is... It seems like he's, like you mentioned Alex Jones, he's a conspiracy theorist mixed with a strong dose of dispensationalism.
Uh-huh.
And rather than go into a full-blown definition of what dispensationalism is, just to kind of characterize your average dispensationalist, the only book of Scripture that's got to be 100% taken literally is the book of Revelation. And man has to do their work to try and make these prophecies come true. As an example, you have a good number of well-intended people out there who have been terribly misguided, who think that they have to actively be working to help rebuild the temple in Jerusalem because Jesus isn't going to come back until the temple has been rebuilt. There's an entire organization that's devoted to raising money to fund the building of the new temple in Jerusalem, because somehow Jesus can't come back until that's done, and by golly, they have to do their part to help out.
That's the portal.
Yeah. There's just another example. There are groups, and granted this is a very good thing, their goal is to translate the Scriptures into every known language, but if you read some of their fine print, their goal is that, well, it says in the Scriptures that Jesus isn't going to come back until the gospel is preached in every language. So we have to do this or Jesus isn't going to come back.
And for those who are fans of Table Talk Radio, you'll love this. Lutheran theologians distinguish between books of the New Testament, which are unanimously accepted as canonical, and those that were to some degree or another disputed by the church fathers. And so if you've ever heard Pastor Brian Wolfmueller talk about homolegumena and antilegumena, that's what he's talking about. So and one of these that is, and we're talking about Revelation as one of these antilegumena books, they're accepted as canonical, but with a caveat that they should be treated with great care. I mean, Luther himself was adamant about this when he wrote the preface to the book of Revelation, when he's talking about how, let everybody think of it as his own spirit leads him. My spirit cannot accommodate itself to this book. Christ is neither taught nor known in it. I stick to the books which present Christ to me clearly and purely. And because Revelation doesn't do that, you have to be very careful about it. But there's so many, like you said, there's so many Christians who read very liberally from this book, but take it very, very literally.
Yes, they do. And just as a bonus for your listeners, well, it's free anyway, but Dr. Laurence White, who is a Missouri Synod pastor, has done extensive work on the book of Revelation. He's written a fantastic commentary on the book of Revelation, and it's available for free. You can get the hard copy. You can get the hard copy for like $20, but it's available for free. So we'll put that link in the show notes.
Absolutely. What prophecy is he talking about here in that government has to do to? They have to take all of our guns in order to fulfill. What is
I'm not entirely certain. It does sound like he is suggesting that we should then support gun confiscation because that's a necessary step in order for whatever prophecy he's imagined up in his mind to come true. The only one that I can think of at the moment is the reference to there being some sort of one world government and how that can't possibly come about unless there are no, arms in the hands of private citizens. I'm guessing that's where he's going.
Gotcha.
It seems like he is of the mind, and this is, where that dispensationalism really works in here with his ideology, that we have to support this because this has to happen before Jesus comes back.
Okay.
Like Jesus needs our help to return.
Right, it's up to us. So next, Uncle Dougie gets back to the anti-gun for personal protection thing. He's channeling his inner John Piper in this next clip.
I can't really find biblical authority in the New Testament to resist with deadly force. If a burglar breaks into my house and is going to steal from me, if he kills me, I'm going to heaven. If I kill him, odds are pretty good he's going to hell. If I care about his soul and the fact that Jesus died for him, the better thing is to let him live longer in the hopes that his soul will get saved and let him kill me. Because A, I hate this place and want to go home anyway, and B, I think that's more the heart of Jesus, to self-sacrifice rather than taking out anybody that wants to steal your stuff.
Gee whiz. We've heard this before. Most recently from John Piper, but several episodes back. Nobody's advocating lethal force in defense of stuff, and so he's gotten off track. We've gone from tyrannical governments to protecting your crap with lethal force. So he's right in that respect, right? I mean, we've had excellent tips from Aaron Israel about this very topic. Don't use lethal force to defend personal property.
Your stuff is not that valuable.
No.
At least my stuff's not that valuable. Yours might be, but mine isn't.
And look, if I lived on a compound raising my own food, surrounded by livestock and a bunch of crazy religious zealots, I would hate this place too, and want to go. But this junk about allowing a burglar to kill you so that he might live longer is just that. It's crap. Your God-given vocation as a pastor, right? If he considers himself a pastor to this flock of people at his compound, and your vocation, pastor, as the protector of your flock, your vocation, my vocation as father, as husband, is to protect our family, right? And our congregation and your congregation. So laying down and dying means you're giving up your God-given vocation, your responsibilities, your job if you're from Rio Linda and don't know what vocation means. You're giving up those responsibilities that God's given you, right?
Right. How can I provide for my family if I let some guy just shoot me dead because, well, he might go to hell if I shoot him instead? What happens to my family? They become victims too. Do they make it out alive? Chances are if the guy breaking into my house is willing to kill me, he's probably willing to kill my wife and kids too. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to take that chance.
Right, and to which Uncle Dougie would say, hey, they're going to be in heaven anyway.
Right. Well,
they probably hate this place as much as you do.
If that's the case, why not pull a Slim Pickens like in Dr. Strangelove and How I Learned to Love the Bomb and just ride that A-bomb all the way to doomsday?
Why don't we just all line up and, Logan's Run and get it over with?
That's right.
Let's assume that you get killed, your family survives. You've now left them without a husband, without a father, without a provider or a protector.
Right.
You're literally laying down on the job.
And for my wife and children, that means they no longer have a place to live because my home is tied to my vocation.
Right.
They'd be homeless.
So they're out on this. They're homeless.
I guess that's what Uncle Dougie really wants, isn't it?
I guess. I hate this place. Honey, you're on your own. I'm out of here.
See you later, suckers.
See you on the other side. And finally, Uncle Dougie wraps up with this.
You cannot store up enough guns and enough ammo that somebody with more guns and ammo cannot take it from you. That's not the point. That's not what's going to save us. The God's economy says the faster you give it away, the faster he'll give you more. Feed the hungry, clothe the naked, take in the poor wanderer, stop the malicious talk and the pointing finger. Don't turn away from your own flesh and blood. Then your light will rise in the darkness, and you'll rebuild on the ancient foundations, and you'll be a spring of water that never fails. That's Isaiah 58. So God's economy doesn't say shoot back. It says, just love them. If they ask you to go a mile, go 2 miles. Shock them, bring them to the Lord, and see what happens.
Well, to quote you from a previous episode, you can't bring them to the Lord if you're dead.
Right. I'm going to give him a little bit of grace here. He did say some good things that, our goal should be to bring these people to the Lord. Mm-hmm. But he's butchering Isaiah 58, and I don't think Isaiah would like that much.
No, he really rattled that off fast, like he's got that committed to memory.
It was a pretty close paraphrase, but he completely throws out the context of this. If you look in Isaiah 58, God is chastising his people because they're kind of being like Uncle Dougie here. Okay, I'm going to read the first 4 verses of Isaiah 58. Cry aloud, do not hold back. Lift up your voice like a trumpet. Declare to my people their transgression, to the house of Jacob their sins. And here comes the transgressions and sins that Isaiah is talking about. They seek me daily and delight to know my ways, as if they were a nation that did righteousness, and did not forsake the judgments of their God. They ask of me righteous judgments. They delight to draw near to God. Why have we fasted, and you do not see it? Why have we humbled ourselves, and you take no knowledge of it? Behold, in the day of your fast you seek your own pleasure, and oppress all your workers. Behold, you fast only to quarrel and to fight, and to hit with a wicked fist. Fasting like yours this day will not make your voice to be heard on high. So, what the people of Israel are being condemned for here is pretending to be righteous, acting as if their deeds are what is going to earn them God's favor, as if this fasting somehow makes them righteous in the sight of God. To relate this to good old Uncle Dougie as if rolling over and dying for whoever wants to tread on us is righteous in the sight of God, as if throwing away our weapons and saying, all right, we submit, is somehow righteous in the sight of God. That these actions are what merits God's favor. But then God, speaking through his prophet, goes on to say, that's not what I want for you. I'm paraphrasing here. That's not what I desire of you. Then he goes on to describe this feeding of the hungry and so forth. In other words, it is to have a selfless love, to not have a self-centered love. And the point of all of this is that God is still going to show mercy wherever he wants to show mercy. That his mercy to us and his provisions for us isn't somehow dependent on whether or not we're doing our part.
I mean, this God's economy stuff, give it to the poor and God will repay you with eternal life, sounds like he's doing the exact same thing that the Israelites were doing in Isaiah 58. You've got to go do all this stuff, and in return, God's going to reward you.
Yeah.
He's got it all wrong.
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
Yeah. Hey, it didn't work for Pelagius either, so,
What are we to make of this? What do we make of Uncle Dougie and his call to lay down weapons and basically be pacifists?
Hey, if that's your shtick in life, I know of a great compound in Missouri that'd be happy to take you in.
They got a dirty pond they'll baptize you in if you're willing.
I've already been baptized once, and I think it held. So
I think I think it took.
Yeah, his brand of Christianity is a very dangerous brand of Christianity because it focuses so much on what we must be doing rather than on what Christ has done for us. Mm-hmm. You read the Epistle of James. Doing good is part of our faith, but we have to understand that it is the work of Christ in us, not something that we must do to earn his favor. It's not about us. As much as he makes it sound like it's all about us, it's not about us. It's about Christ and what he's done for us. And when it comes to owning firearms and when it comes to issues like gun control, let's face it, hey, there's nothing sinful about owning a firearm. You're not transgressing any of God's laws unless you happen to use that firearm in a manner that is immoral.
Right. All right, well, thank you very much, Pastor. I think that pretty much wraps it up.
Hey, it was a fun one today.
It's always fun when we get together and take one of these apart. Thank you all for listening, and if you have any comments or questions about anything you heard here today or suggestions for a future episode, drop by the website, armedlutheran.us, check out the feedback page in the menu at the top, and leave us a message or an email or a voicemail. We'd love to hear from you, and maybe play your message on a future episode. Thanks for listening, and tune in again next week for another episode of Clinging to God and Guns, right here on Armed Lutheran Radio.
John Bennett is the pastor at St. John's Lutheran Church in Willow Creek, Minnesota. For more information, visit stjohnswillowcreek.org.
And that's going to wrap it up for this week's show. Thank you to my awesome cast of contributors, Sergeant Bill Silvia, Mia Anstine, and Pastor John Bennett. Aaron Israel's been traveling for work quite a bit this past week. He'll be back with us next week. And thank you, dear listener, for joining us, for downloading, for subscribing. If you would, if you like the show, share it with a friend. Tell a friend about it. Share it on social media. I encourage you to share it with people in your circle of friends. I would appreciate if you would do that. I hope you'll join us again next week. Until then, keep shooting, keep praying. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Armed Lutheran Radio. For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, and TuneIn. This podcast is made possible by Cook's Holsters and contributions from listeners like you.